The Raiders failed to stop the bleeding on Sunday as they lost to the Denver Broncos 24-17. That's now 7 losses in a row. In time of possession, told you all you need to know about this game. That plus more on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for December 8th, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one sports podcast network out there. We're very proud of that fact, and we're also very proud of the fact that you show up and show out to come in and tune into this show each and every day. Continues to grow, even in a bad season like the Raiders are having, 2-11 now on the season, but the show continues to grow. That's because of your support and the great job that my man Ari does behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good by way of the YouTube page. So we shout him out. We appreciate him. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, as many of you do, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line for you, 707-654-4693. We'll hear from you in segment number 3. As a matter of fact, your calls and texts, plenty of great feedback. Segment number 2, we'll talk about some of the young guys as the Raiders have hit that part of the season where younger guys are going to start to be showcased, younger guys are going to start to be evaluated, and maybe even see a potential quarterback change as we saw Kenny Pickett for about a quarter on Sunday. So we'll talk about that in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, and it really just has to do with the game and how it all unfolded. We'll jump right into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show. That's FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season long, visit FanDuel.com and place all your NFL live bets all season, as you know, getting closer to the postseason as well. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. And first and foremost, thanks to everyone who showed up at Allegiant Stadium, showed up to the torch, and I was able to meet and greet and shake a lot of people's hands and tell them thank you for listening to the show personally. It means a lot to me. It's actually my favorite part of the day. If we're keeping it 100, right? Keeping it real. It's my favorite part of the day, just being able to chop it up and talk about the show and talk about why the show means so much to you. So thank you. I cannot say thank you enough. But the Raiders do lose 24-17 to the Denver Broncos. Now are 2-11 on the season, and really it wasn't even that close. They had a late touchdown that got them a little bit closer. They had a late field goal that actually helped them cover. So a lot of gamblers won some money. If you're on FanDuel.com, you know you probably won some money based off that last field goal, but it was really complete domination by the Denver Broncos. And this is all you really need to know about how this game went. Denver had 39 minutes of offense, over 39 minutes of offense, 72 total plays on 7 total drives. The Raiders, on the other hand, had 20 minutes of offense and 48 total plays on 8 total drives. So can you see the big difference? I mean, the Broncos had one less drive and all those more minutes, like just about doubled up the time of possession for the Silver and Black. On their touchdown drives, they had their first drive, 14 plays, 81 yards, 8:59 off the game clock. I mean, could you imagine before the Raiders ever take the field, there's already 9 minutes basically off the clock and Denver is in the end zone. Then they had a punt return touchdown, so that didn't take any time. That got them in there. Again, Raiders special teams not being so special this year. So it's 14-7. Denver was leading at the half. Then coming out of the locker room, the Raiders get the ball, give it back to Denver. 14 plays, 91 yards, 9 minutes and 13 seconds off the clock for the Denver Broncos. So again, 2 drives of 14 plays, 81 yards, 91 yards, 8:54, and 9:13. On the Raiders' scoring drives, their touchdown drives, 10 plays, 70 yards, 6 minutes and 6 seconds off the clock. That was the initial drive that they had after Denver went up 7-0. So you're thinking, okay, that was a really good drive. It looked really good. They looked like they could do basically whatever they wanted to offensively. They were looking good with Geno Smith throwing the ball. Ashton Jeanty was running just enough to keep the defense honest, and it looked really good. Now, after that first drive, after the scripted plays, is when it went all sideways for the Raiders and their offense. So the first drive, 10 plays, 70 yards, 6 minutes and 6 seconds off the clock. Brock Bowers gets a touchdown pass. That's his only target on that drive, but it was a good target as it was a touchdown. Then their other touchdown drive was late in the game in the fourth quarter. Kenny Pickett was actually in the game, and he hit Shedrick Action Jackson. Remember him from training camp? Actually talked to him one-on-one, talked to him multiple times during the training camp. He was the guy who got a touchdown against Seattle in the preseason. He was elevated on Saturday to the active roster for the game and got into the action later in the game in the fourth quarter. 6 plays, 65 yards, but they were going super fast, so only 1:39 off the clock. And like I said, Shedrick Jackson, 25-yard touchdown catch from Kenny Pickett. And those are their 2 touchdown drives. So 20 minutes and 57 seconds, 48 total plays, 8 total drives. And that's it. There was guys that got some burn in there, some young guys. We'll talk about them coming up in segment number 2. Geno Smith left with the injury. He had messed up his hand, and basically someone had stepped on his hand, and the cleat had basically pulled the skin off the hand, and so they were trying to stop the bleeding on that, and then he got hit in his shoulder, and so he ended up leaving the game with a right shoulder injury. We'll talk about that coming up in segment number 2. And I hate the fact that it's early December and we're talking about draft picks, but it kind of is what it is when you're a 2-11 team. The New York Giants now hold the number 1 overall pick in the 2026 NFL draft after the Titans and the Saints won on Sunday. The Giants have Washington, Minnesota, Vegas, and Dallas to finish off the year. And with the loss that the Raiders suffered to the Denver Broncos on Sunday, the Raiders hold the 2nd overall pick and control their own destiny to the 1st overall selection, since they do have the Giants in Week 17. So, again, it's unfortunate that it's early December and we're talking about draft position, draft picks, but that's what it is. I mean, there's just at some point you're just going to have to kind of lean into it and embrace it. I always want to hold out to the end, but like I said, we know what it is. It's going to be a long offseason. It's going to be a lot of tough decisions, but one way to make this this offseason look a little bit more attractive for the Raiders is to have the highest draft pick as possible so they can, make whatever decisions they have to make. So if they can get that number 1 spot, and I do believe they can with the Giants coming to town Week 17, I do think the Giants are going to play tough. I do think the Giants are going to give them a hell of a game, and would not be surprised if they win that game. I would not be surprised if the Raiders go out the rest of the season and not win a game. But again, don't want to get too far ahead of myself. But as of right now, through 14 weeks, the Raiders have the number 2 overall pick in the 2026 NFL draft. But I mentioned some young guys getting some burn. Let's talk about a few of those guys that got some burn on Sunday's game versus the Broncos. We'll do that coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of the great sponsors we have on the show, and that is Aura Frames. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's just not something you wrap. It's a way to share your memories, because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before you gift it, so when they plug it in, boom, the memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup, no headaches, just instant smiles. So your grandparents, parents, newlyweds, anyone who loves photos, this is perfect for. You could add a personalized message right inside the frame so the gift feels thoughtful the moment that it is open. It's a holiday gift that actually gets used, not forgotten in a drawer or even re-gifted. So right now, for a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named number 1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code LOCKEDON. It's all one word at checkout. That's Aura Frames, AURA frames.com, promo code Locked On. This deal is exclusive to listeners of the Locked On Raiders podcast. The frames will sell out fast, so order yours now to get in time for the holidays and support the show by making sure you mention us at checkout. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to talk about some of the young guys, and it's this time of the season. It's the last quarter of the year, and a lot of us have been talking about when are the young guys going to get some burn, when are you going to start to see what you have, and we all knew that the evaluation season to that level was coming sooner rather than later. We all thought that Jack Bech was going to get more burn, especially with Dante Thornton Jr. being out with the concussion. Well, he did. He got plenty of snaps. He had 6 catches on 6 targets for 50 yards. He was actually the Raiders' leading receiver. So, I mean, that's not bad for the second-round pick out of TCU. You still like to see him continue to get some more, but I do expect down the stretch, the rest of the way, right? 4 more games left to go. I think you're going to see a lot more of Jack Bech. You're starting to see him really evolve himself into a NFL wide receiver. Obviously, he still has a long ways to go, but seeing him get into the action, and the one thing about Jack Bech is a lot of his catches, they go for first down, so that helps extend drives, and that's a good deal, especially when you're trying to, possess the ball. Like I said, go back to segment number 1, we're talking about the time of possession and the lack of time of possession. You need to extend drives. Jack Bech is one of those guys that's a really good possession receiver. He's a tough dude. He blocks. So as long as he, continues to evolve and try to figure it out, the Raiders will know what they have in him. Do they still need to go out and get more weapons in the offseason? Absolutely. Is he going to be a number 1 wide receiver? Probably not. But he could be a really good possession receiver. Again, play that role that, Jacoby Myers had. And again, I'm not saying he's just going to fill in and take over for Jacoby Myers, but I'm sure that John Spytek, when he drafted Jack Best, he probably had that Jacoby Myers type role envisioned in him. So it's just something he has to continue to evolve in. Shedrick Jackson, I mentioned him. He was the guy that was elevated on Saturday, and the Raiders do this each and every week where they have a guy or two that they elevate to the game day roster. He had one catch for 25 yards and a touchdown. His first NFL catch, and it's a touchdown. So not too bad. He actually had a game ball leaving the locker room. He was pretty excited about that. But like he said, it would be better if they had actually got the victory. But it was cool to be able to catch that touchdown pass from Kenny Pickett, a guy that he has a lot of experience with on practice and during practice, since Kenny is a backup and Shedrick obviously is not with the starters. Darian Porter started the game at the defensive back position. He was splitting time with Caillou Blue-Kelly. Unfortunately for Caillou, he went down very early with what Pete Carroll's calling a very serious knee injury. He did not give us the full details of what it is, but you could tell when he was doing his back pedal, and then it looked like he tried to break and he just went down. So it was some kind of knee injury. They carted him off. You could tell by the way that he was pounding the ground and the way that he was moving on the ground. You just knew that it wasn't good. And all the teammates took a knee. All of them went over there and hit him on the helmet on his way out. So unfortunately for Caillou Blue-Kelly, probably going to end up being a season ender. I don't think I'm going too far. I'm getting too far ahead of myself by saying that. It just definitely didn't look good. And Pete Carroll mentioned after the game that it was serious. But Darian Porter, he got some burn, and I actually liked what I saw. There was a lot of times where I liked what I saw, pass breakups. He looks like he's starting to get more comfortable and looks like he's starting to get more confident. And that's the biggest thing, especially playing that corner position. You definitely have to be confident. And he looks like he's getting there. He had a couple nice PBUs on some Bo Nix passes. And like I say, it looks like he's starting to come into shape and form of what he needs to do, especially with Caillou going down. Now you can expect to see more from Darian Porter. Caleb Rogers, right? He got to play the whole game. Remember last week against who did they play last week? now I forgot. It was already who was it? The Chargers, right? Yeah, the Chargers. Man, this season goes by quick, doesn't it? They play in the Chargers. He only got 17 snaps. Him and Antonio Mafi, they split. Well, they didn't split him this time. This time, Caleb Rogers got to play the entire game, and the fact that nobody called out his name, the fact that we weren't talking about him is a good thing. If you're an offensive lineman, you don't want to be talked about. That means that you're doing some good things. It looked like Caleb Rogers is starting to come into form, and a guy that Pete Carroll and company feel more comfortable with playing, having there out there on the field. As a matter of fact, this is what Pete Carroll had to say following the game about Darian Porter and Caleb Rogers.
Darian, got a ton of play time. He's been playing regularly. He's started some games, and he's been out there doing it. So we're very confident in that he's making progress. Caleb got to play a whole game today. That's magnificent for us to evaluate and for his growth and all of that. And didn't seem like the issues were there. I didn't see any issues with him watching the game from the sidelines. But like you said, we watch the film and then we make the good determination and see how we move on. But that's really, really helpful for his cause to try to help our football team. And I'm grateful that he made it through the game. It's a good move for us.
So again, it just sounds like that Pete Carroll's getting more comfortable with playing these guys and feels like what he's seeing from them in practice is warranting them to get some time in the game. And we all knew at some point they were going to have to get that burn. You cannot not learn something from this season. You cannot go and have a terrible season, probably end up, 2-3 wins max this season, and then not learn anything about the players that you have on the roster. It's just not going to work. JJ Pegues, you saw him defensively get in there. Tonka Hemingway, he got his first sack, so he had some folks talking to him in the locker room following the game. He was pretty excited about that. Max says that he sees a lot from Tonka in practice, so it's kind of cool to see Tonka Hemingway get a sack as well. And then Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett came in for an injured Geno Smith. I talked about that injury in segment number 1. The hand injury was bad enough, right? They had to stop the bleeding on that, and then he got hit with the shoulder. Don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, it's going to be a storyline that we're going to continue to follow all week long, but thought Kenny Pickett did a really good job. If nothing else, I don't know who Kenny Pickett's going to be, but you give up a 5th-round pick for him. When Aiden O'Connell went down, you might as well get some burn, and Pete Carroll's been very bullish on playing Kenny Pickett or getting him out there, but he obviously had him out there because Geno Smith left the game with that right shoulder injury. So here's Pete Carroll talking about Kenny Pickett following the game.
I've seen a lot of Kenny in practice. Is what I always go back to that. He's active. He's quick. He's really athletic. He's a good thinker. He's a really clearly competitive guy that gets situational football and knows what's going on. Kenny was the first one to say, "Hey, we're going to kick field goal on this drive, right?" Which didn't quite work out right at the end. But I see nothing but positive stuff, and his mentality. And I'm coaching the hell out of him because I want him to be ready if the opportunity pops. It's just exactly how we did it with Geno for years. And however long it takes for the opportunity, whatever, he's going to be ready to go. And he's got enough stuff to him, his athleticism. I keep reminding him you can use your legs and run because he's really quick, and he can explode and get into the secondary and make things happen. Is so often helpful to a quarterback trying to make him his way. So I'm really positive about him. I love that he's on our team, and I'm really seeing his attitude being exactly where it needs to be ready for the op when it happens. So, and he came to today in marvelous fashion. The couple throws, the touchdown pass was exquisite, and for Shedrick to have that chance, we were kind of rooting for him. It was his first chance to play, and to get a perfect play for a touchdown for those two guys, I thought that was great. So we should shout to Shedrick Jackson. That was a great play.
So a storyline that we'll follow throughout the course of the week. Pete Carroll after the game didn't sound like he's just ready to pass the sticks on to Kenny Pickett. Sounds like that he's going to try to give Geno Smith every opportunity to be ready to play this upcoming week against the Eagles. But, again, that'll be a storyline. We'll talk to Pete Carroll a little bit later on this afternoon by way of Zoom. Normally it's in person at around 11 o'clock, but it's being pushed back to about 2:30 by way of Zoom. So, obviously, that'll be something that we talk to him about all week long just to kind of get the status on who the quarterback's going to be. But, I mean, Kenny Pickett, he is athletic. Right, he's able to run, which obviously with this offensive line, you're going to need somebody who could run. Pete Carroll talking about use your legs. Like he's encouraging him to use his legs. The other thing is he was getting the ball out pretty quickly, right? And I thought that pass that he threw to Shedrick Jackson for that touchdown, 25-yard touchdown pass, was probably one of the nicest passes we've seen all season from a Raider quarterback, right? I mean, it was a really good on-the-money pass. Now, does that mean that Kenny Pickett's going to start the rest of the season? No, not at all. Again, like I said, it sounds like that. Pete Carroll is going to give Geno every opportunity, but that you got to get that ball to your hand as quickly as possible. So you don't end up getting sacked. And Geno got sacked another 4 times on Sunday. So he's still, even when he does have protection, he still holds on to the ball too long, and he's taking a bunch of sacks. So the good thing about Kenny, I mean, he's not going to be the best quarterback. I'm not saying he's the long-term solution at the quarterback position, but he gets the ball out of his hand pretty quickly, and he's athletic. So we'll see what happens with him moving forward. Guys in the locker room that we talked to following the game, they all pretty much had confidence that Kenny Pickett could go run the offense if need be. But that's definitely a big storyline to pay attention to. Will Kenny Pickett get back in there this upcoming week? Oh, against his former team, by the way, the Philadelphia Eagles. But what's on your mind? Your calls and texts will close out the show, 707-654-4693. We'll hear from you next. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple of the great sponsors we have here on the show, and the first one is Gametime. The World Cup, it's coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is always going to be the hardest part. That's why the Gametime app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to grabbing seats. With Gametime, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment that they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You can pull up the app. The layout makes it so simple to scroll through matchups and compare seat views. And the seat view, man, that feature is a game changer. You literally see what the pitch looks like from your exact seat before you buy. Plus, include the fees up front. Prices are all up front. You'll love that, right? No last-second surprises when you go to check out. Right now, take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets. Every match, concert, or event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create the account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, download the app, make an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's all one word for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Gametime. I also want to tell you about our good friends at FanDuel, the title sponsor of today's show. And you know NFL Sundays, they move fast, man. We're already about to go into Week 15, right? Week 14 gets wrapped up with Monday Night Football. One big play, suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. So with FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. So maybe you were watching Sunday Night Football between the Texans and the Chiefs, and you saw a big play defensively and thought, okay, this is where the Texans are going to have their move. Or maybe this is where Patrick Mahomes is going to save the day, and boom, you can live bet it just like that. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up, and you can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and a lot more. It keeps you locked into every single snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action all season long, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets. With FanDuel. The game moves fast, and so can you. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Again, thanks so much for making the Locked On Raiders podcast your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate that. Off top, got a text from Bodie Raider. I actually got this late last week, but I wanted to make sure to hold on to this. He said, "Hey, Q, I just heard your podcast today, and I'm kind of baffled that you think Pete Carroll should get or could get another year. I'm almost baffled that you're even talking about him. I don't see how any reporter could look at the personnel decisions, the play calling. So many things have Pete Carroll written all over it. Stubborn and just he's lost it. I'm not a naysayer, and I wanted it to work, but the guy, if he gets another year, we're literally wasting our franchise's future. I can't believe that you are so open-minded and positive about that. As much as I want continuity, this guy has to go." That's from Bodie Raider. Thanks so much for the text. I appreciate you. And it's not that I'm saying he should get another year. I said my gut feeling is that the Raiders don't want to move on from him. That's all I said. I mean, the Raiders have a lot of different coaches that they're playing, and I don't think that they want to fire another coach. I think that they want to make things work with Pete Carroll. I don't know if it's going to. That's actually what I said. I'm going to have to talk about him. He's still the head coach of the team. I mean, I can't ignore him for the last, month of the season? Well, that guy who's the coach, but I'm not going to say his name. What are we talking about? It's all part of the process, Bodie. I mean, again, this is going to be conversations that are going to be had at the end of the year. Look, the last game of the year against Kansas City, it might end up, when it's over, who knows? 10 minutes after the game, maybe Pete Carroll's fired. Who knows? We don't know. But it's literally my job to monitor this team and talk about everything that happens. And there's a possibility that he could come back. And there's a possibility he doesn't come back. I mean, I don't know. I would be just making something up if I told you for sure what was going to happen. So I literally have no choice but to talk about it, and I'm not going to ignore it. that doesn't make any sense. So no, I never said he should get another year. I said he could get another year because I think that in my gut that the Raiders don't want to fire him. That's all. I'm not too sure what's so baffling about that, but that's just my explanation that I have. But thank you for the text, as always. Appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Tyrone Raider from Clarksville, Tennessee. He's calling to talk about the new draft position that the Raiders are in. Also talks about a possible change at quarterback with Geno banged up. Here's Tyrone from Clarksville, Tennessee.
Q, what's up? It's your boy from Clarksville, Tennessee. You better call Tyrone Raider. What's up? Tyrone Raider here from Clarksville, Tennessee. In a good mood, even though we lost, but I didn't pick us to win any more games this year, so that's that. But we did move down. We're now, instead of being the 4th pick overall in the draft, we are now the 2nd pick overall. And with the way things are going, we will end up with that 1st pick. My question, though, as I'm watching some other shows on right now, everybody's pointing in. Geno's hurt. Geno's banged up. Why can't we start Kenny Pickett? Why is Pete Carroll just so blinded by Geno Smith that he can't even look at starting another quarterback? I mean, it's crazy. Listening to him in that press conference, that was ridiculous. We had a spark with Pickett. I say we roll out with Pickett the rest of the season, see what we got in him as well. Maybe we can, have somebody bundle together a bunch of picks for us so that we can address a bunch of issues, not just the quarterback issue. Maybe Pickett is something. I don't know. We need to see. I don't know. That's just my opinion, but I wanted to know, Q, what you thought about, letting Pickett start against his old team. He even knows that team, the Philadelphia Eagles, next week. Much more mobile right now than Geno, and he's getting the ball out of his hands faster than Geno. Well, thanks once again for all that you do, Q, and thanks, Ari, for putting this show together for him. And let's go, Raiders 2026. Take care. Raider Tyrone out.
You better call Tyrone. Shout out to you, my man. Appreciate you. Thanks so much for the call. And yeah, I mean, it stinks that we're talking about draft picks. As I talked about in segment number 1, I hate that we're talking about draft picks, draft positions, right? What you need to go and do. But I mean, when you're 2-11, that's just what it is, right? At this stage of the game, to me, it just feels like if they lose out and get the highest pick possible, that's going to be fine. I want every game to be competitive. I don't publicly root for losses, but I get it. At this stage of the game, to make the Raiders offseason that much better, it'll be for them to have the best draft pick. I mean, that's draft position. And it's just unfortunate, like I said, it is reality. And I definitely think there should be consideration of Kenny Pickett getting the look. But as you said, listening to Pete Carroll, it sounded like if Geno can go, he's going to let him go. And I talked about it briefly in segment number 2. And we were talking about young guys and Kenny Pickett getting some burn. But for anyone who didn't hear, here's the thoughts from Pete Carroll on the possibility of going to Kenny Pickett this week against the Philadelphia Eagles.
Would you consider giving Geno a week off and letting Kenny start considering the
Let me
opponent?
just wait and see what happens, okay? I mean, I'm going to do what I think is the right thing to do, and if Geno can play, that's my thought. And but I know Kenny can play, and so our players understood it too, that Kenny did a good job, and they recognized that in the locker room after the game. But I'm rooting for Geno to get back out there and see how he does. But we're not going to play him if he's not right, and so Kenny will be ready to go, and Aiden will be ready to go as well. And so that's that's just the way how we'll deal with it. But I'm not even going to try to call it now, and I don't need to be hypothetical about that either.
So it didn't sound like to me that he has any intentions of just, hey, going straight to Kenny. Now, if Geno can't go, if his shoulder, which is pretty banged up, pretty locked up, as Pete Carroll said, if he can't go, then okay, Kenny Pickett will be ready, Aiden O'Connell will be ready, as Pete Carroll said. But it sounds like option 1, 2, and 3 is Geno Smith first, right? It sounds like that's what he really wants to make work, and that's what he's done all season long. And I guess going back to Bodie Rader's text, maybe that's part of the personnel decisions that has driven you crazy, and I know has driven a lot of Raider Nation crazy, is that he seems so hell-bent on making sure that, Geno Smith is a starting quarterback. But the reality is they paid him. They gave him the money that they gave him. They're going to give him every chance to go out there and earn that money, or at least go out there and get the burn that they can get out of him, since they did pay him. So that's the reality of it. But I'm with you. I don't think, unless Geno just cannot go, I don't think Pete Carroll is going to go to Kenny Pickett. But we'll see. So thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. Up next, got a short text from Mike in Buffalo. It says, hey, Q, it's Mike from Buffalo here. Hope all is well. Pittsburgh fans are loudly calling for a Tomlin to get fired. If this happens, the Raiders should fire Pete and hire Tomlin. He could build this, and he's young enough to see it through for some years. Just a thought. Go Raiders. Well, yeah, everybody's talking about Mike Tomlin until this past Sunday, until they got the win over the Baltimore Ravens. And then Tomlin's cheesing into the camera. People are feeling good about themselves because Baltimore, who everyone thought was going to take over that division, including myself, I thought they were going to take over that division. Now all of a sudden Pittsburgh's in sole possession of first place. So, things change pretty quickly. I don't think that there's any chance that Pittsburgh would ever fire him. They may, at the end of the season, decide to mutually part ways, but there's no way the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to actually fire Mike Tomlin. That's not going to happen, but he could become available. And if he does, and the Raiders have an opening, they should definitely try to talk to him. I don't know if he'd be interested in being a Raiders head coach. He'll have plenty of options if he becomes available. That is for sure. Thanks so much for the text. I appreciate you. Just got time for a couple more. Raider J-Bone, he's calling to talk about the Raiders losing another one and doesn't really see any other wins coming up on their schedule. Here's Raider J-Bone.
Hey, Q, Raider J-Bone checking in after another Raider loss. I don't see many more wins, if any at all, on the schedule for us. And it's hard to find a bright spot on the season right now. Kenny Pickett, I thought, showed some promise. I think we're going to stick with Geno. It seems like that's what Pete Carroll's going to do. But he seems like competent backup for sure. Kenny Pickett today, he looked all right. So season's pretty much over, I think. I don't see any wins, like I was saying.
J-Bone, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. The back end of your call actually got cut off. It was really muffled, so I'm not too sure exactly what it was. But as far as what the team looked like and Kenny getting the ball quicker, that's what I referenced in segment number 2. He can use his legs. He should be in consideration to play. But unless Geno just can't go because he's banged up and just not healthy, I think that Pete Carroll's going to put Geno Smith out there. But we'll see. We'll see. And, maybe the Raiders win that Week 17 game versus the Giants. But at this stage of the game, they probably want the Giants to win it and then them to lose out so they get the number 1 overall pick. I mean, I'll tell you what, that'll be a hell of an offseason if the Raiders hold the number 1 pick. They control the draft. That would be something, especially with all the draft capital that they do have. So thanks so much for the call. Definitely do appreciate you. Got a quick text from Raider Castro. Yo Q, it's your boy Raider Castro out the east side of Bakersfield. Just want to say Bama shouldn't be in the playoffs and the Irish got screwed, but it's all love. Raiders for life. Mac 10 voice. I'm out. That's Raider Castro. And you know, funny thing is, as a guy that yells Roll Tide all the time, I don't disagree with you. All right. They've got 3 losses and they got beat down by Georgia. I think at some stage of the game, and I understand the math and I understand the argument on why they should be in, and it's Bama, so they're always going to get that kind of love. But man, something should be said about a style of losing and the way that they lost. I mean, it didn't even look like they were going to score a touchdown against Georgia on Saturday. So it should be something to be said about that. But until they get this thing figured out, and they'll probably expand it to 16 next year. I don't know if Notre Dame got screwed. They don't have a championship game. They're not in the conference. So I can't really say that, they got screwed, because who knows, if they actually were in the championship game, maybe they would have taken an L too. So, I mean, it's again, there's no perfect science. It's just not. And at some point, college football will expand the playoffs to 16 as opposed to 12. But thanks so much for that. I do appreciate you. We'll close out from a text from Joe in the 804. Hey, Q, it's Joe from the 804. This has been the best week of the Raiders season. I'll tell you why. We now control our destiny in the draft and should lose against a better Giants team, enabling us to have the first pick of the draft. Secondly, many of our rookies had a good performance against one of the best teams in the league. Besh, Porter, Rogers all played well and held their own. Excited to see how they continue to develop through the rest of the year. As always, thanks for what you and Ari do for the nation. Have a great show. That's Joe in the 804. And yeah, kind of going with the conversation that we were having there in segment number 2 and segment number 1. We're talking about the potential of the number 1 overall draft pick. Again, hate the fact that that's what the conversation is. But that's what the conversation is. We got the Raider Squad show coming up a little bit later on this morning, 7:30 to 8:30. I'll be live. Lincoln Kennedy will be right where I'm at right here, Studio Q. Chantel Chan, of course, she'll be getting her Howard Cosell on and hosting the show. So that'll be a lot of fun. And we'll talk to Pete Carroll coming up at around 2:30 this afternoon. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.